Magandang araw, Malacanang Press Corps, and welcome sa ating press briefing ngayon, September 24. In today's Cabinet Sectoral meeting chaired by President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr., the economic and agricultural sectors presented the outlook for inflation as well as management strategies for food and non-food inflation. NEDA Secretary Arsenio Balisacan reported an overall lower inflation rate of 3.3% in August down from 4.4% in July, and this was due to slower food and non-food inflation. Note that inflation was mainly driven by food, covering about 1/3 of the total. Rice remains the top inflation driver as well as pork. Non-food items, including restaurant services, rentals, and transport, have also contributed significantly. Some factors in non-food inflation being mitigated include electricity and fuel. The Marcos administration is managing the impact of inflation, especially on the most vulnerable sector. The Department of Agriculture is here to brief us on President Marcos's directives to manage inflationary factors that may affect the price of rice, sugar, and pork, such as La Nina impacts, importation, food production, and African swine flu. And the Department of Finance will be briefing us about the overall economic and financial outlook for the coming months. And joining us now are Secretary Ralph Recto of the Department of Finance and Secretary Francisco Chula-Rel of the Department of Agriculture. Good day, sirs.
Good morning.
Good morning. Almost good afternoon. Let's start with you, Secretary.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks.
Secretary Ralph,
Yes.
go ahead.
Well, first and foremost, we had a briefing, as mentioned by Daphne earlier, by DEDA, with the President insofar as inflation is concerned. And the good news is that inflation is on a downward trend. Last year, inflation was about 6.1%. Today, we're roughly at 3.3%. We expect inflation to go down to 2.5% by September. At ang pinakamahalaga, palagay ko, meron tayong sapat na bigas at hamon sa Pasko.
That's good news. Short and sweet. Before we go on to Secretary Laurel, you did mention how we stand in the global inflation reports. We are the global inflation
Yes.
is 5.9.
That's correct. Sa buong mundo, ang inflation rate more or less mga 5.9%. So tayo naman dito, 3.3% lang. So nararamdaman na natin yung mga nagagawa ng ating pamahalaan.
Thank you. Okay, Secretary Chula-Rel, go ahead.
Well, as far as ASF is concerned, the first 10,000 doses will be finished, vaccination will be finished by end of the month. And the schedule for the award for the next 450,000 doses is on October 10, of which we will take delivery of 150,000 doses by then. But we hope to complete the procurement of 600,000 doses by end of December this year.
Okay, thank you. Let's open the floor to questions. Okay. Harley Valbuena, DZME, all the way in the back. Please pass the mic. Alexis, thank you.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Ms. Daphne and secretaries. Sirs, it is already the Burr months and nabanggit niyo po kanina, Secretary, meron tayong sapat na hamon sa Pasko. So, do we expect the inflation to rise as the Christmas season nears?
Well, normally, seasonal naman yan. Tuwing fourth quarter, tumataas ng konti. Pero like I said, we expect it to be within the target range of the BSP of anywhere between 2 to 4%. So for the full year, we're looking at the total inflation rate to be about 3.4%, more or less. No? And the beauty about reducing inflation is that your GDP growth goes up and more jobs can be created, your borrowing cost goes down, and it will be good na magkakaroon din kami ng BSP meeting by October, and possibly we can reduce interest rates further. Mas maliit ngayon yung interest rate na babayaran ng gobyerno, pero higit sa lahat, pababa na rin yung interest rate, halimbawa sa credit card ni Juan de la Cruz, papunta sa Pasko.
Okay. Ann Soberano, Bombo Radio.
Secretary Recto, good morning. Sir, according to Global Credit Watcher, itong Moody's,
Yes.
binigyan ng Baa2 investment grade credit rating ang Pilipinas with a stable outlook. Secretary, saan po natin pwede ma-attribute na na-maintain ng Pilipinas ang malakas na investment outlook despite global economic environment? Thank you.
Yeah, well, meron tayong medium-term fiscal framework plan at nakikita nila credible yung plano natin. Number one, the economy is continuously growing. Second quarter growth was 6.3% for the entire year, 6.1% for the first 2 years of the president. On the average, 6 to 6.1%, one of the highest for all presidents since we began tracking GDP. And like I said, our fiscal framework plan is to reduce that deficit to about 3.8% by 2028. So we're just following that plan. No? At nakikita natin yan, yung mga spreads natin pababa. So pag umutang ang Pilipinas, mas mababa ang interest rate. No? We did get a credit rating upgrade from R&I. This is a Japanese rating agency, and conscious tayo sa programa natin Road to A. Of course, by 2028, we want that all the rating agencies will give us a grade of A. Kahit A minus pwede na.
Okay. Sam Medanilia, Business Mirror. Please pass the mic. Chona. Thank you.
For Sec Recto. Analysts are saying that the reduction in the reserve requirement ratio is equivalent to around 300 to 400 billion in liquidity. Are you concerned that this will lead to a spike in inflation? Why or why not?
No, we've considered that when we decided on that policy in the BSP meeting, the last BSP meeting. This will be good for the economy. It will improve the capital markets. You're injecting roughly 380 billion into the system. It will be good for banks. And then may lag effect din naman yan. Well, ito, mas immediate to than the policy rate, no? So, not really. That's all been considered, and we expect inflation to be 2.9 to 3.1% next year. So, even lower than this year.
Sir, yung saan po
And
nanggagaling?
that will help also grow the economy pala. Yeah.
Sir, saan po nanggagaling yung confidence natin na ma-achieve natin yung 2.5% inflation this month, tapos yung sabi po yung 2.9% by next year, considering na mag-election at tataas yung spending tsaka yung La Línea?
Well, like I said, no, for September, ang expectations natin is roughly 2.5. It's a range between 2.1 to 2.9. The midpoint is roughly 2.5. I also mentioned seasonal ang inflation. So during the fourth quarter, medyo tataas ng konti yan. But still within the range of 3.1 to 3.9%. And next year, based on the models that we have, we're looking at 2.9 to 3.1%.
Thank you.
Okay. Christian Isores, Radio 630.
Good morning, Secretary Recto.
Yes.
You mentioned 2.5% yung expected nating inflation by September.
Yes.
But what could be the possible challenges na pwedeng umangat sa ulit given na parang tumataas po ulit yung presyo ng petrolyo? And ano po ba yung current na monitor natin sa rise in inflation?
Yes. Well, the biggest problem is yung gera sa Middle East. Kung yan ba, lalaki yung gerang yan. Diba? But since in September, you only have, a week to go. So palagay ko, we're on track with regard to the inflation target for September. But our biggest challenge really is external headwinds. No? And one would be the war in the Middle East. No? So we don't want that to go out of hand and possibly oil price increases, which we have no control over. No? There is a pressure also on electricity rates to go up, but the president has decided to spread that out to roughly 36 months. No? Para hindi masyadong tumaas din yung inflation rate or yung binabayaran ng consumer natin sa electricity. So I think everything is manageable.
Okay. Leth Narciso, DZRH.
Secretary, sabi niyo po kanina ay nararamdaman ang mga ginagawa ng pamahalaan kaya bumababa yung inflation. Ano po dun sa mga ginagawa na yung nagkaroon ng malaking impact?
Maraming ginagawa ang Secretary of Agriculture. Yung tariff reduction, palagay ko, nag-uumpisa na rin makatulong yan. But we expect that to further go down in the coming months. yung reduction in tariff rates for rice particularly. So pababa na rin yan. I think 1% bumaba ang presyo ng konti, and may lag effect yan. It takes a few more months. No? When you reduce tariffs, it takes a few more months before you can feel the entire effect. So hopefully by tamang-tama pagdating ng Pasko, medyo mas mababa na siguro ang presyo ng bigas.
Okay, Tuesday New.
Good afternoon, sirs. To Secretary Laurel, sir. Sir, kumusta po yung pakikipag-ugnayan nyo sa Philippine Ports Authority with regard to the overstaying of container vans na may mga bigas? Nakakita na po ba kayo ng elemento ng profiteering or hoarding doon sa nangyaring pagkaka-overstay ng mga container vans? And may makakasuhan po ba o sino po ba ang magkakaso?
Sa ngayon, base sa data, no, may mga na-move out na more than 300 containers. And meron mga overstaying containers pero hindi ganun karami pa nakikita namin. And basically abandoned na yun eh. Yung mga may 2023 na ilang containers, may 2022 na ilang containers, but majority is still within the 30 days na allowable nila to keep the containers in the port, no. But we've talked to the importers, of course, and they're moving it out na. Kahit na mas mura daw kasi yung charges dun sa port kasi sa warehouse nila, that they have they're helping us to move it out para malagay na sa merkado. And of course, I'd like to thank PPA and the BOC, no, for assisting the DA in this endeavor. At malaking tulong at nakasynchronize so kami para sa darating na mga buwan, lalo pa sa Kapaskuhan, na maraming dating na shipment para efficient lahat. Thank you.
Mayroon bang makakasuhan, sir? Sabi po kasi titignan kung mayroong...
Yung sa abandoned na yon, we checked that some companies, mukhang hindi na rin existing yung companies eh. But of course, we're still gonna pursue the investigation and we'll get to the bottom of this. But as of the moment, medyo fresh pa to, so maybe after a week or two, may have more details.
Okay, sir. In case, sir, halimbawa, sabi nyo abandoned na, ano ang pwedeng gawin ng gobyerno doon sa abandoned container vans na yun na may lamang bigas? Pwede ba yung i-custody ninyo o makuha ninyo, maipamigay o maibenta sa kadiwa?
Normally, we will have to have it tested first if it's still food safety natin. Once it is determined as safe siya for consumption, then BOC will have to be the one to seize it and maybe auction it or give it to kadiwa. So nasa BOC yung mandato dun.
Okay, Maricel Halili, TV5.
Sir, magandang hapon po. Clarification lang. Sir, when you say na hindi na siya nag-exist, yung mga companies na to, meaning nagsara na sila?
Yun ang initial report.
So kung nagsara na yung mga companies na yun, may habol pa ba tayo just in case you found out na meron pala silang liabilities for abandoning those cargoes?
I would like to think na meron pa silang liability, no? But I will have to we're consulting our legal department on that.
So ano sir yung tinitingnan natin na timeline? How soon are we going to know whether or not they will be facing charges?
Probably, as I said, mga 2 weeks siguro malalaman na natin yung detalya ng kumpanya, kung sino to, kung existing pa o hindi, yung opisina ba, nandyan pa, o kung yung tao is still nandyan pa o wala na. No? We'll get all the details.
And how many companies are we talking about, sir?
Mga
Yung
dalawa
mga
lang. Dalawa lang.
And ang cover po nila is gaano karaming cargo?
A few containers lang. Maybe 1 or 2 lang. Or 2 companies maybe with 3 or 4 containers.
Okay, Ivan Mayrina, GMA7.
Secretary Recto, sir. Season ho ng pagpapadala ng mga balikbayan boxes sa mga kababayan natin. Kumusta ho ang sitwasyon natin sa Bureau of Customs? Are there specific instructions you're giving them para masiguro ho na yung mga padala ng mga kababayan natin makarating in time for Christmas?
I don't know if there's a problem right now. Siguro pwede namin pag-usapan ng BOC Commissioner. Pero from what I know, we don't have a problem right now as far as yung mga balikbayan boxes are concerned. So yan naman, logistics issue yan. Basta dumating support, trade facilitation tayo dito. And for sure, we will get all those cargoes out.
So that's an assurance to the families
Yes,
here
definitely.
na matatanggap nila in time.
Definitely.
Ano naman
Kailangan
ho,
maligaya ang Pasko natin lahat.
ano naman ho ang forecast natin, sir, sa foreign exchange? Kasi medyo pababa ho yung
Correct.
value ng dollar ngayon. Yung mga padala ho kaya nila.
Correct.
Ano ho kaya magiging value by
Nakakatulong
December?
yung paglakas ng piso sa inflation din. Okay? So right now, nasa 55.80 if I'm not mistaken. Seasonal din yan. Lumalakas ang piso pag Pasko. So palagay ko, lower 55s. Yan ang mangyayari. So makakatipid tayo sa mga importation natin.
So yan ho ang inaasahang palitan ng mga OFW families by December.
That's correct.
55.
That's
Thank
correct.
you.
More or less, 55, 10. Hard to tell, but I think it will be a bit stronger than where you are today.
Thank you.
Did you Alexis Romero, Philippine Star.
Secretary Rector, if I'm not mistaken, we are looking at 5.6% of the GDP deficit for 2024. Tama po?
More or less, 5.6, 5.7. That's correct.
Okay. Are we going to achieve that this year?
Very confident we will achieve that this year.
And what gives us this optimism?
I've seen the numbers. We're hitting our targets.
The revenues.
The revenues, the expenditures, we're hitting our targets. And ergo, your deficit will be down to about 5.6 to 5.7 this year.
So within the target. How about
That's correct.
enforcement measures against tax evaders? Will this also figure?
That continues. All of that continues with the BIR.
So 5.6, 5.7, what will be in absolute figures?
Well, you can calculate that 5.7% of roughly 28 trillion.
Okay.
You get the numbers, yes.
So we'll achieve that.
Yes.
Thank you, Sec.
Okay.
Pia Gutierrez, ABS-CBN.
Secretary Recto and Secretary Chu Laurel. Sir, based sa surveys kasi managing inflation has always been the top criticism of the public dun sa administration ni President Marcos. So how would you assess the administration's efforts in addressing this?
Yeah. Well, like I mentioned earlier during our opening statement, last January of 2023, it was 8.7%. August of 2023, it was 5.3%. Today, we're down to 3.3%. So we're making good progress. Now, in addition to that, we do have a lot of social programs that we're undertaking. More or less 50% of all Filipino families will benefit from the budget this year. Yung mga ayuda program, yung 4Ps, AKAP, AIX, MAIP, you put them all together, that's more than 500 billion. You're talking about roughly 12 million families will benefit from that. So this is like a wealth transfer. Okay? So lahat yan nakakatulong sa mga pangkaraniwang mamamayan to cope up with inflation. So hindi kasama sa numero yan, pero kasama sa numero yan sa pagtaas palagay ko ng approval rating ng Pangulo at ng buong pamahalaan. Now, you are correct that the inflation is the number one concern. If you take a look at the different programs of government, ang rate ng taong bayan doon ay maganda ang approval rating sa iba't ibang programa ng ating Pangulo.
Sa food inflation naman, well, ang ating Pangulo ay nakatutok dyan actually on a weekly basis, no? From rice to corn to sugar, isda, manok, baboy. So, pinaplano na pag-uusapan natin ng ating presidente yan sa DA at sa mga other agencies on how to stabilize. Of course, initially is to stabilize prices, but and think of ways on how to bring the cost down, no? Of course, a lot of investments are now being made, no, for post-harvest, like cold storages and rice processing systems that will help lower the price of goods sa consumers, but increase farmer farmer income. So nandun ho tayo at nakatuto ko si Presidente mismo dyan at ang Department of Agriculture is also looking into this naman on a daily basis. So naka-monitor ho tayo.
Secretary Laurel, perhaps you'd like to brief them on the significance of expediting the ASF vaccine for the market and also for the farmers.
Well, ang napaka-importante na ma-roll out talaga natin yung ASF vaccine, no, to lalo na sa mga backyard farmers, livestock growers natin, dahil this will pag may confidence na ang mga magbababoy sa vaccine na to, and then they will start investing again in farms, pati yung mga commercials natin, at magre-repopulate. So hopefully everything will be implemented on schedule, and sana next year puro repopulating na lang tayo at tuloy-tuloy na yung paglaki ng babalik yung population ng ating baboy to about 14 million heads from ngayon nasa 7.5 million heads lang ang baboy na estimate natin. So, yun.
Okay, Alexis again.
Secretary Recto, na-mention kanina yung monetary intervention dun sa interest rates. Given the easing inflation, do you see the central bank cutting rates further this year?
Definitely. And I did make a statement a few days ago. Ang Fed nagbaba ng 50 basis points o 0.5%. Palagay ko tayo, kaya din natin yung 0.5%.
And what do you expect given this easing of the policy? Ano yung nakita ninyong possible impacts sa ordinaryong tao?
Sa ordinaryong tao, dalawang bagay yan. Isa, yung credit card mo, bababa yung interest charges mo. Isa yan. Pangalawa, yung mga namumuhunan, mas mababa pag umutang para makapagtayo ng negosyo. Di ba? And then for next year, may lag effect din yan. So next year, we will have a better chance of hitting our 6 to 6.5% growth rate if we're able to reduce interest rates this October.
Salamat po.
Thank you.
Okay. Pia Gutierrez again.
Secretary Recto, sir, you were talking about yung nag-start na natin na feel yung effects ng tariff reduction dun sa inflation, and you said it will take a few more months before we feel its entire effect. So, yung forecast natin, by how much yung pagbaba sa inflation do we see this, and how long?
Initially, I don't have the numbers right now exactly, but more or less mga 6 pesos yan on the imported rice. Okay? But it all depends on what world prices will look like, no? Kasi we mimic naman world prices din But I think by November, December, it should be by the time dapat pababa na
My
yan.
personal the DA's estimates are by mid-October dapat pababa na yan slowly, no? But the full effect should be felt by January of 2025.
Yeah.
Marami pa tayong stocks yung stocks na imported na nabili ng mahal, paubos na. But the problem is maraming nabiling local palay at a very high price, 30 pesos per kilo from January to June of this year. Marami pang stock nun. So, but paubos na rin tingin ko by November yan. No? So, we should see a lowering of, because of the lower duties, tsaka bumaba din ng konti ang international price ng bigas. So, pababa na yan. But the full effects, para sa akin, 5 to 7 pesos ang range. So, I'll put it at 5 pesos na dapat bumaba. Kung 52 ngayon ang kunyari ang bigas, dapat by January nasa 48 na lang yan. Kung 50 ang bigas ngayon, 45 dapat yan by January. Yan ang aking estimates. Thank you.
And Soberano.
Secretary Laurel, sir, may forecast din kayo na possible na tumaas din ang presyo ng mga karne like the pork ngayong holiday season? Mayroon pa tayo kasing ASF na
Well, yung what is happening sa ASF now, with what's happening sa ASF now, actually, ang mga magbababoy habang wala pa yung vaccine, gusto nilang magbenta at magkatay No? So we expect na hindi tataas ang presyo ng baboy. Although demand masyado sa Pasko dahil tuloy-tuloy pa ang pag-grow at gusto nilang katayin na kaagad yung baboy para malesen yung risk nila So, but of course, demand in December is usually double, no? Mataas. So, baka tumaas ng konti, pero hindi naman siguro significant.
Okay. Sam Medonilla, again. Microphone, please. Anne, thank you.
For Secretary Recto. Sir, yung na-mention po nila na medyo pababa na po yung price, price for international price ng rice. May plan po ba na yung government to review yung EO62 na 15% na tariff for rice? Since pababa naman, pwede increase po ba nila yun amid concerns ng mga local farmers?
Ako ang number one is kulang ba ang supply natin? Kung kulang ang supply, kailangan mo mag-import. There's no way around that, di ba? Okay, so it will take time for us to increase our production. At yan naman ginagawa na ni Secretary Laurel. No? The budget, the last 2 years are significantly higher than the previous 2 years. No? Ang budget cycle natin, 2 years ang budget cycle na isang taon eh. Di ba? So in effect, we manage 2 years budget in 1 year. Okay? So having said that, there should be adequate resources for the Agriculture Department to increase the production. It'll probably take at least 2 years. Okay, so basta kulang ang demand tumataas. Okay, as the economy improves, as incomes improve, people buy more rice, people buy more pork. So your demand is increasing. Kung ang supply mo hindi nag-i-increase, maliwanag kailangan mo mag-import. Okay? So, eventually, tataas din yung supply natin. Pag tumaas yung supply natin, saka siguro natin pwede bawasan din yung taripa.
Mga kailan po kaya natin expected na...
Every 6 months, nagre-review naman ang Pangulo dyan. Every 4 months, rine-review yan. Oo.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Okay. I think, if no more questions. Well, thank you so much, Secretary Tu Laurel, and thank you, Secretary Recto.
Thank you,
Daphne.
Maraming salamat, Malacanang Press Corps.
Thank
This
you.
concludes our
Thank
press
you.
briefing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.